be wrapped in towels before being put on a client. One of the most valuable techniques for working with sports injuries or muscle tears is called deep transverse friction or cross-fiber work. And to understand the reasoning behind it, we need to understand what happens with an injury. First off, when a muscle is relaxed, it's going to be long and thin. And when it contracts, it will become shorter, but it also becomes broader. Now let's say that we have a tear in this muscle, like a grade 2 muscle strain, where about 50% of the fibers are torn. The way the body repairs that is with scar tissue. And the scar tissue is never as good as the original tissue that it replaces. Scar tissue is not elastic. So when the same muscle goes to contract, the scar tissue is binding across the muscle fibers and doesn't let it contract so well. The scar tissue gets pulled on, and if the person uses the muscle with enough force, they can re-tear the scar tissue. And I'm sure you know of people that have torn a muscle and then continue to tear it again and again as they continue to re-injure the area. And part of this is because of the scar tissue that's in the muscle. Well, what we do with the deep transverse friction or cross-fiber work is go into the muscle at the exact site of the scar tissue, going in deep and slow, working across the fibers of the muscle in a transverse direction, stretching out and actually tearing the scar tissue. But what we do is we tear the scar tissue that goes across the direction of the muscle fibers, and we end up leaving the scar tissue that goes parallel to the direction of the muscle fibers. Then when the muscle goes to contract, it's able to contract fully without deforming the shape of the muscle or pulling on the scar tissue as much. So it can restore normal function to a muscle that hasn't been able to contract fully before. Now I'm going to show this technique on Benny. And there's a number of things that we need to consider first before starting this. One is that the injury has to be at least 3 weeks old. You need time for scar tissue to form first. You never want to do this on a fresh tear or injury because there's no scar tissue there. And even when the scar tissue is just forming, you want to be careful because the scar tissue is not that strong, and you don't want to aggravate an injury that still may be inflamed. So we need to wait until it's gone from an acute stage more toward a chronic stage. So give it 2 to 3 weeks before starting with the cross-fiber work. We're going to work on a hamstring tear, and the first thing we want to do is warm up the muscles with some general massage techniques first. We never go right into cross-fiber work, but we want to warm up the muscles. Then we need to find the exact site of the tear, and it's usually not difficult to find scar tissue in muscle. It will feel lumpy. It will feel like a lump in the muscle. And with hamstring tears, typically it will be right near the ischial tuberosity, near the origin of the hamstrings. And we get right in to where the muscle tear is, where the scar tissue is. And you can do this with fingertips or with thumb. Getting in deep, and you go slowly. You make sure you're slow enough, and you're moving the skin and the tissues over the muscle underneath. So it's very deep work. This can be a little bit painful, but usually it still feels like a good hurt to the client. We get in slow and deep, going sufficient transverse sweep, going back and forth far enough to stretch out the scar tissue. This is also done with the muscle in a relaxed position. We're using a bolster here so the leg's not fully extended. And I'll do this treatment up to 5 minutes at any one time. And it can be done a couple of times a week. I wouldn't do it more than twice a week because the area can be a little inflamed after working on it, and we don't want to aggravate it. You need to do it progressively It should be done, at the very least, it should be done weekly, but I wouldn't recommend more than twice a week. And then after doing the cross fiber work, we always want to finish with ice in order to keep the inflammation down. And for the ice, we're going to use ice cup. What I do, I have the ice in a Dixie cup, and I'll just tear paper around it so we have a nice surface here to use. And this is going to feel a little cold. The ice right on the area here like this. As it starts to get wet, we can wipe it off. And you can do the ice until the area becomes numb. Remember, we go through the stages of cold, aching, burning, and then numbness. How's that feeling now, Benny? Okay. Hopefully we'll get to the numb stage soon. One of the nice things about this work with ice is the more you use ice in an area, the faster it'll get to the numb stage in successive treatments. You can let me know when that gets to the numb stage. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. So then Benny also could do exercise to help break up the scar tissue, doing leg curls with an exercise machine like Nautilus, and doing it 3 sets of 10 where she feels it in that last set of 10, and then following it with ice. And for that, it may be more convenient to use an ice pack. But again, you want to use ice after exercise to also help with keeping the inflammation down, because exercise can inflame it. I have had great success with this with hamstring tears. We had one of our students who had a hamstring tear. She was a runner and had torn her hamstrings about 10 years previous and had pain every time she went running during that 10 years. When she was in class, I started working with her, doing the cross fiber work, following it with ice. And I treated her once a week for 3 weeks, also had her do some exercise, followed with ice. And after 3 weeks, she was able to run again for the first time in 10 years without any pain. Now, most of the areas that we do the cross fiber work on, we want the muscles to be relaxed. The exception to that will be for tendons that have a sheath, and for that, we want them stretched out. And that would be the Achilles tendon, tendons on the front of the ankle, and tendons around the wrist. For those, we want them in a stretched position while we work. The cross fiber work works for tendinitis as well as muscle tears. It has the effect of causing a minor inflammation in the area, so ice again is used after working with it. But it has the effect of breaking up any fibers of scar tissue that are going in the wrong direction, helping everything to be more aligned afterwards. With cross fiber work, it's important to finish with some good general massage. So after working the more specific work, going back to some general work on the hamstrings. Just like we started out with good general massage to warm up the area before going very specific, it's good to finish with some general massage as well, smooth everything out. There are a couple excellent reference books on the subject of deep transverse friction or cross fiber work. These books are by the person who originally developed the technique, Dr. James Cyriax. One of them is called the Illustrated Manual of Orthopedic Medicine, and as the name suggests, it has a lot of illustrations, and it shows how to determine the exact site of an injury, the nature of an injury, and talks about treatment of different injuries. And then going more into detail is the textbook of orthopedic medicine, which goes into detail on each of the injuries, prognosis, and what to expect.